Welcome. What is Titan? A no-code platform for Salesforce. What can you do with Titan? You can build forms, portals, document generation, e-signatures, maps, automation, and a lot more. Security is really important to us. Therefore, we are HIPAA compliant, PCI SSC compliant, GDPR 508, and ISO compliant. So, what are you waiting for? Schedule a demo with us at Form Titan and let us build the impossible for Salesforce.
We were just a bunch of nerdy kids who ignored the haters. We took their ridicule and we built on it. And when some of us gave up, well, we built on that too. Built resilience, built on a mission to make things a little better every day until the users came. Then the haters were VCs who scoffed at our audacity. This just isn't the way things are done. But we kept building. Users turned into teams, turned into companies, running their entire businesses on our apps. Then the software giants came after us. We weren't proven, we weren't fully featured, our radical cloud model wasn't secure. But we built on. And today, as companies adopt the cloud to move faster, teams are finding themselves slowed down by each other's efforts. The skeptics are claiming we'll never develop innovation at scale. But now, DevOps have come to the cloud, ushering in a new era of transformation. Companies can release on demand across hundreds of environments, innovating faster with fewer conflicts and fewer disruptions. There will always be challenges. There will always be naysayers. And we'll build on.
So hello. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world for this inaugural virtual Dreaming, and specifically this Women in Tech Equality interview tips and making the next move in your career. My name is Blanca Leon Carter. I am a Salesforce consultant at Slalom, and I am also the VP of Community Engagement for Rad Women. And over on the right, you'll find Twitter handles and LinkedIn. Now, handing it over to my co-speaker.
Thanks, Blanca. And I am Allison Park. I am a Principal Enterprise Architect at Salesforce. I'm also the Program Manager for Workforce Development at Rad Women. And there is my Twitter handle and my LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me. And as Blanca and I have been through a few career changes and job shifts over the years, we talked about it and we thought this would be really a great opportunity to share the things that we've learned and the insights that we have with all of you. So this is what we're going to go over today. We're going to start with explaining why equality matters. We're going to give you some tips, getting that interview, preparing for the interview, leaning in to the interview. Transition signs, things to look for to know it's time to move on from where you are. We're also going to give you a bunch of great resources to use as you undertake this type of transition and consider this type of transition and to build your skills. And then we will make time for Q&A in the end, but feel free to pop a note in the chat or the Q&A as it comes to mind, and that way we can try and get to as many as possible when we get to the end. So with that, Blanca, can you walk us through why equality matters?
Yes, equality matters, exactly why this image is over here on the left-hand side, because we are stronger together. And please remember that wherever you are in life, in your professional career or personal career, that we can always be an ally to someone else. And we all need our own allies. So let's talk about why we're specifically focusing in on women in tech equality. And the truth of the matter is that the women in tech diversity stats, these stats are for America, but I'm sure that the disparities are true in other parts of the world. So wherever you're joining us from, these stats may be even more drastically lower than what we're looking at right now. But this means a lot to me because I'm a woman and there's only 47% of us in the workforce. And within that, 25% of us in computing roles. And when I say computing roles here, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a technical position. This just means that you're using computers in some shape, way, or form within the position that you have. And when we drill down deeper, this is where it really hits home for me. Asian women, 5%. Hispanic women, 3%. I'm within that 3%. Black women, 1%. And coming from a family that's multicultural, all of these percentage affect somebody in my immediate family. So let's also take a look at why organizations benefit from making sure that they're spending enough time and investment in their recruitment process to work to close the gender gaps and work to close the diversity gaps. And the reason being is because those of us women and of underrepresented minorities, we bring a different perspective. We have different views that can contribute to projects and to the customers and clients that we are working with and products that we are developing. And that goes a long way. And again, when it comes to attracting talent, a lot of companies are focusing on diversity and inclusivity. And one thing that we want to touch upon here is that we need to recognize intersectionality, which is essentially this framework of one's social and political identities that combined together can cause injustices and discriminations against us. So for example, I'm a Latina. I also, came from a relatively poor neighborhood. My dad was an immigrant from Mexico. I also had a child at a relatively young age. So you may see that all of these pieces that make up the identity of who I am can bring discrimination from other people who are just not used to understanding and valuing people like me. And we want to make sure that everyone is able to bring their full self to work. So now I'm going to turn it over to my co-speaker to tell us a little bit about getting an interview.
Thanks, Blanca. So getting that interview, it can feel at times like you're trying to run through a maze. You take a left turn, you should have taken a right. So let's talk about what you can do to increase your chances of getting your foot in the door and getting that interview. So the first step that I think we want to talk about, Blanca, if you could advance the slide, please, is networking. So networking, if you remember, I don't know, for myself, I remember thinking of networking as going into a room full of other professionals and just being very overwhelmed, feeling acutely shy. So networking in today's world, many years after I first started networking, is a much more open and frankly fun place to network, especially in the Salesforce Ohana. You can use your social media. So that's LinkedIn, Instagram even, Twitter for sure in the Salesforce world. We use that quite a bit. When we network, we can also network in-person events when we get back to those, and virtual events just like this one. In fact, Blanca and I first met a few years ago in a Women in Technology Developers meeting, WIT Devs meeting, and found out we were in the same hometown and connected up in real life. And the rest, as they say, is history. So you can create meaningful connections simply through virtual, and I think we're proof of that. An important note, though, and networking through LinkedIn, be sure if you're connecting with someone, especially someone you don't know or haven't met yet, and you're not going through some kind of introduction between someone you both know, be sure to always include a note. Many times I get folks linking in with me and they don't include a note, and I don't know them. And as a practice, I don't connect with people that I don't know because I don't know who they are. So it's really helpful to just say, hi, Blanca, I saw you on WIT Devs. I'd love to connect with you and learn more about your background and hopefully get together. Another way, a good thing to think about is to diversify your network. So look at connecting with people in different companies, different geographies, different strengths than what you have. If you are an admin, connect with developers. your developers, connect with admins and architects. The more diverse your network is, the much more likely you are to find others that can help you on that path to getting into an interview. Another thing to think about is that you can also propose a virtual coffee. It's a real simple idea where you simply block off, 20 minutes or so on a person's calendar and get a chance to talk to them and learn more about their background and how they found their job. It also deepens that more meaningful connection, because then when you can actually see the person, it's another level of understanding who they are and really feeling that you know each other. I do want to take a moment to talk about your brand. I think that's something we talk about more and more today. We like to talk about the fact that you are the Chief Marketing Officer of You Inc. What you portray on social media and how you go through these interactions is all telling everybody about who you are, and you want to present authentically who you are so that you actually attract those opportunities and those positions that you find the most engaging and where you'd be the best cultural fit. I do want to discourage you, if you're using social media to portray your professional brand, to think about that. You might not want to go off on a political rant or any kind of negative thing that might detract from your brand. So something to keep in mind. I'd also suggest that the profile picture that you use on Twitter and LinkedIn and wherever you're portraying your brand be a professional headshot, so that it presents a professional photo of you. I know we all like to have a special selfie or maybe a picture from an event or something like that where we crop out everybody else, but if it's a professional headshot, it will show you in the best light. Another thing I'd like to share with you is having a board of directors. These are friends, colleagues, folks that you can lean on to talk about how you present yourself on social media, projects that you undertake, opportunities you're interested in, and they're folks that are going to give you honest feedback that you really need. Something like mentors, but also it'll be multiple people so you can get a wide range of perspectives. Last note that I want to share with you is for that resume, before you send it in to a particular company for a position, be sure to tailor it for that position and that company. Be mindful of that company's culture, which you can learn about on the website and learn from other people at the company. And for that job description, that particular position, you want to highlight the experience that you have that most impacts that particular position, so that that rises to the top and they can see it right there. And certainly follow all resume best practices. In fact, the Women in Technology chapter in Chicago is actually going to have a resume workshop coming up at the end of May. So do look in the community for that. The last piece of information I want to share with you on landing an interview on your resume, proofread it. Make sure that you have everything in line on your resume. You would hate to have a typo or a misprint or anything outside of what you really want to portray on your resume. So be sure to have others take a look at it. And with that, now you've landed the interview. Now it's time to prepare. So I'm going to turn it over to Blanca to share with you how to prepare for the interview.
Yeah, thank you, Allison, for mentioning the important fact that we need allies. So part of preparing is knowing who are your allies and who is your audience. So to get to know your audience, Allison already touched upon, using social media to your advantage, right? Do your homework, look at the companies that you're going to interview for, get to know, what recent posts they put out there, what projects that are related to maybe the tools that you'll be working in or systems that you'll be working with, what new innovative work that they're doing, so that when you do go into your interview, you have a good understanding of where the company has been and where they're at now and where they're trying to go for the future. And getting to know your audience, don't stop at the company. I always look up, if I have a name of who I will be interviewing with, no matter if it's just a recruiter, I look them up on LinkedIn. I try to see, okay, where did they go to school? Did they major in something or have a concentration that maybe I can relate to? I often have found that I actually went to school with some different years, but we're part of the same alumni. So that is always a nice way to break the ice when it comes up in conversation. And there also, it creates a link for bonding during the interview process. And you may have more than one interview, so make sure you look up everyone as you find out their names. And also preparing is finding your allies. And we touched a lot about leveraging your networks. This is your personal and professional, your social networks. But one area we didn't really focus on just yet is how to find your allies within the company that you are at. And this is important because if you do like the company that you are at and you know, you're maybe been in the same position for some time and you're finding that you want to work your way into a different type of position or start taking on a few projects that are a little bit more interesting or a little bit more responsibility, there's ways that you can start vocalizing that, you know, to find an ally that you feel safe and comfortable around so that you can be like, hey, you know, that project was fun. I really want to do more stuff like that because I believe that I can bring XYZ skill sets and perspectives that will contribute to that. And you never know, if those allies that you have here that they may be opening up a position, they may drop your name in the hat without you even knowing that. And they may be at tables, especially with leadership, as they're planning out organizational structures and weaknesses and roles that they may need to start developing that are new to the company. They may just throw the idea out there for the position that you're looking for. So it doesn't always mean that you have to leave the company that you are at. If you like the company you're at, try to find a way to build your position. And then also let's talk about the technical interviews, because on top of your phone interviews and your in-person interviews, the technical interviews is an area that can just right off make anybody nervous and sometimes hesitant to even go in and try, right? First and foremost, when you're going through the recruitment process, you can ask questions in terms of what is the next step? What format will it be in? You know, you don't have to ask a million questions, but you can try to see what you can gain from the recruiter or whoever your touch point is to figure out what the next step is. And if you do have a technical interview that's going to be coming up, make sure that you take time to use that board of directors that Allison told us about and other people in your network to hold mock interviews. And when you're going into it, if you don't fully understand what scenario they're presenting, if you have a few questions, take time to ask them before you jump into the technical interview so that you can get those clarifying answers that you need so that you can be your best self during the technical interview. And please know that these technical interviews, yes, they're looking for how well you understand and comprehend the tech, but they're also looking at approach. How did you understand what is needed? How did you break down and strategize what needed to be done and what your approach was? And if you felt that you hit a roadblock, vocalize that, you know, towards the end of the interview and, you know, say, hey, we can either go this way or we can go this way depending on, and you can ask them a question and they'll be surprised because a lot of times then you're kind of challenging them to make sure that they're giving you the right scenarios with all the information you need. And that's the little investigator in you, right? Making sure that you know what you have to do. So if you're feeling like you're not in the technical interview 100% confident, just please know that there's ways to communicate all of those approach and pain points and etc. so that you can lean in during the interview. And let's now switch it back over to Allison, who can talk about how you can lean in.
So thanks, Blanca. Some really good insights. But now that we've gotten the interview, we've prepared for the interview, we want to give you a little bit more to work with so that you feel even more prepared to make yourself stand out. I know we've all heard this statistic that men apply when they think they have 60% of the experience required for a particular position. Women tend to be more cautious. We tend to only apply if we feel we have 90%, maybe even 100% or more of the experience necessary for a position. And we tend to not apply and talk ourselves out of it. And I really want to hopefully give you some tools here to push you forward in that. Because it's important that when you're going on to your next position, whether that's in the existing company or even in a different company or organization, to remember that the position you're taking on should be one that gives you an opportunity for growth, that it gives you a chance to further develop your skills, try new things, and truly grow. So don't let that scare you off. So when you don't have the exact experience and you know you've got that gap, we want you to be confident when you walk into that interview. So one of the things you can do is look at that job description and think about things that you have done that talk to the fact that you have the aptitude for that position. And with that particular skill set, talk about learning something new similar to that and how you went about it. You want to give the person who's interviewing you that confidence that you're going to show up, you're going to be excited about it, and when you get thrown a challenge, that you're going to dig in and you're going to be able to manage it. I would thoroughly discourage you from saying, well, I just don't have experience there. You want to walk in and give them something and show you have that aptitude, because we know you have it. You just need to learn to articulate it. So that's a great thing about mock interviews and practicing there. I actually have a friend who mind maps her experience when she looks at a job description. So she has a skill set, and then she just starts to think creatively about things that she does in her everyday life that shows that she can either demonstrate that aptitude or adapt and get that skill very quickly and do the job, and maybe even bring something more to it. Very important to be honest as you go through all of this and authentic. You don't want to say that you have experience that you don't have. That is a no-win situation. And as you're interviewing, want you to talk about what you're understanding from the interviewer. Really show that you're listening. You want to make sure that that's an active conversation. It's really easy, especially when we're nervous, to kind of go into our own head and not really mirror back to the other person what they're saying, what they're understanding, what they're concerned about. So make sure to push yourself to take those notes and ask questions that follow up on something that they bring up, especially if it sparks your curiosity or sparks any concerns you have. Those active listening skills will very much pay off in an interview. And follow up after the interview. Many years ago, we would always write an interview note, but in today's world, things move much faster. So email, if you don't have their email, reach out to them via LinkedIn with just a note thanking them for their time, regardless of how the interview went. Thank them for their time, and also make it personal. Tell them, hey, I really appreciated that we talked about this particular topic, or I learned a lot from you, especially when you talked about fill in the blank. It's really heartening when an interviewer puts in that time and sees that a candidate is interested. It makes them want to get to know you more. So one last thing is be open to feedback. If you're lucky enough to be in an interview where they do give you feedback and let you know where they feel you have strengths as well as weaknesses, do mirror that back and be very grateful for that kind of insight. It helps you to understand more about that company and what they're looking for, but it also can help you understand how you might strengthen what you bring into the interview and be able to be more prepared to talk to it, especially if you get another interview after that. So now you have the structure of how to go through the interview process. We do want to talk about transitions, what signs to look for in a transition. So Blanca, can you give us some of those signs that we can look for to when a transition is the right thing?
Oh, you bet I can. So if anyone follows me on Twitter or caught last week's Trailhead talk show, I kind of shared some of my experiences through those channels. So one of the transition signs, and I like to call these red flags, right? So if you start seeing these and they're getting more deep red and more are popping up, yeah, that's time for transition, all right. So Allison already touched upon, room for growth. If where you are at in the position, you're taking on more responsibilities, or maybe you haven't because they haven't given you the opportunity. Maybe you're still in the same pay grade. Maybe you're still there's not any talks or conversations about where you can move into in the future, and you're finding that you want to start branching out and widening your wings and flying away with some other more interesting projects. No room for growth is definitely an area that you want to look at. Also, think about lifestyle changes, right? Lifestyle changes all the time. You may have heard my little one in the background when we first started the session. And he's at an age where I kind of need a little bit more flexibility, and to make sure that I'm at a company that understands if something comes up, family matters and is top priority. Or maybe, you don't have any kids, but maybe you have, someone in your family, a loved one or a close friend or partner who falls sick and you need to become a caregiver. That is very stressful, and that's a lifestyle change that may call for you to start looking for different types of positions, or seeing if your company has flexibility for the position that you're currently in. And also there's positive lifestyle changes. For instance, let's say you just want to travel the world and be an adventurer while you're working. Hence, the Salesforce market is really booming and you can work from anywhere with internet connection, which is why I love it. So that's another lifestyle change that may call for a transition. Another one that hits home for me is a toxic workplace. What does this look like? You may have seen it. You maybe haven't totally convinced yourself it's time to go, but from my experience, if you're working way too many hours and not being recognized and you're near burnout, that's a problem. If it starts impacting your overall health, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, and all around, no workplace is that important of your health. You need to put your health first. So that's a toxic workplace. Toxic workplaces are also just not supportive ones, right? You don't have colleagues that you can speak freely with, who let you chime in and help build out areas of the project and contribute to whatever that needs to be done. Maybe there's a big boys club at your company, because yes, I hate to say it, they still exist, so maybe they're not listening to you. We have a friend of ours, actually, Melissa Hill Dees, who has done a session, and it's called Am I on Mute? And that's what it feels like when you're not being heard, whether it's because there's a boys club or just because you don't have the leadership and you don't have the colleagues who want to hear you out and see what ideas you have to bring to the table. So those are all toxic workplace red flags, and you probably should be considering a transition. And the last one that I'd like to talk about is not necessarily a red flag, but I do truly believe, and one of my previous associate directors who I worked with for many, many, many years, always told me that one should always be looking, because you never know. So what does that mean? Do you always have to be going to all these job sites? No, but maybe it is that you subscribe for, Indeed email alerts for a specific system like Salesforce, and just see what alerts come up and what positions open up. This allows you to keep a temperature on what the market is looking like. And it also allows you to see that maybe your position, as you've taken on more responsibilities, is morphed into that of another, and the company just hasn't acknowledged it yet. And then also, I'd like to bring upon the reality that we are living in a global pandemic, and this is hitting people across the world in so many ways, and so many people are losing their jobs. Maybe they had a really good job and the company was doing really well, and then this just really shook things up, and now they're finding themselves being furloughed, or maybe just flat out being laid off. Or maybe you were a small business owner, ran your own consulting firm, and things went wrong and business went sour and you have to look and pivot into another direction. These are all transition signs that you should be looking out for. And now let's cover some final thoughts. I'll let Allison kick us off.
We're at 10 minutes left.
Thank you, Deepa. And we do want to get to your questions. So we'll go through this very quickly and hopefully inspire you with this. I love this graphic because she's in a power pose, which I'm a big believer of before you walk into that interview or do a presentation, to go into the power pose with your feet shoulder width apart and your hands on your hips, standing up straight and knowing that you have an invisible cape behind you. Walk into that interview, walk into all these professional situations with that confidence and believe in yourself. It can get difficult to feel that way, but just know that's there and bring it out in yourself. And don't try to be perfect. There is no such thing as perfect. So be yourself, be confident, be present in the moment, really listening. And one helpful hint is wear appropriate clothes to an interview. Even if it's on camera, you want to make sure that you're dressed in a way that you don't worry about how you look. Do your hair, paint your nails, whatever you need to do, even if the interviewer doesn't notice, it'll give you confidence and give you comfort as you go through the process. Anything else to add, Blanca, before we wrap up?
Yes, so while you're believing in yourself and being confident, please take time to negotiate. You've done your research already. You have an idea of what your high and low range is. Don't be afraid to share that. If you're asked, what is your current salary? You do not have to answer that question. You can ask, oh, well, positions on the market average about this. Is that something that you all have in your budget? Because I'm looking in that range. And don't settle, right? So if they are not able to give you the salary that you're expecting, try to see if you can negotiate things like flex time. If your health benefits are not supposed to start for like 3 months after your start date, negotiate if they can start it on day 1 instead. Negotiate paid time off, right? So these are all things that you can do to make sure that when you add up the monetary value of, you know, flex time and more paid time off and the benefits, it may put you at the salary range that you were wanting in the first place. And this all helps you to make sure that you're planning for your future and you're keeping in mind that this next move is not just going to be a temporary one, it's going to be a good one, and it's going to support your trajectory for the future. And here is a slide of resources for the sake of time so we can take Q&A. I don't want to, you know, read them all out. There is a link to the radwomen.org/VD for Virtual Dreaming 2020, where you can actually click into each of the websites for all of these resources that are on here. Some that are really true to our hearts is Rad Women, WIT Devs, and Ladies Be Architects, and Super Moms, because they really are all focused around women and women in tech. So time for Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much, ladies. Such a wonderful, wonderful session. So I'm going to start with the Q&A part, if I can get my mouse to cooperate with me here. So the very first question is, will you be addressing the challenges of the current labor market, especially for women now? What would you say? I mean, the reality is we are in a precarious situation. So
absolutely.
Go on to the next one.
Yep. So, and I would say to that, and you know, no one can plan for a pandemic, and we don't have any crystal ball any more than what we've shared with you right now. Of course, my dog starts barking. Apologize for that. But I would say the ideas behind networking, and especially this community, are very true. I know both Blanca and I have been through our own disruptions in our career and dealt with it, and it can be a while to kind of find your footing, but do lean on your network. If you don't have a network, this is the time to build one. And folks are very open, especially in the Salesforce community.
The next question is, you know, I have a testing background. This wonderful lady was pregnant, you know, stepped away from work, is coming back to work, and has got her Salesforce Administrator certification, but can't find work because companies want experience. So what's your advice for women who are coming in? There's a couple questions like that where, you know, it's so hard to find a job, especially when you can't demonstrate that you have experience. And I love one of the comments that Blanca made about think about something else you've done and talk about how you went about achieving it. So I felt like all throughout you've kind of gone and answered this question, but any other real advice for that person?
I can add a few more. So with that, I would say take advantage of Trailhead. If you don't already have an account, that Salesforce's free learning platform, start working through those modules. Try to get to Ranger and above if you can. It's not a race, but please know that there is a lot of value in that. There's also a lot of super badges. So take time to try to get some of those super badges under your belt, because you can use that as part of your portfolio, especially if you're trying to fill in gaps. The other thing is a Salesforce Trailhead also has the challenges, right, which are really fun. And usually if you're on Twitter, you can share where you are in the progress of whatever challenge that is going on at the time. I think I did the Be a Builder back when I was in transition, and I actually like put a recording up of like my design diagram, and you know, I was learning, but all of those are real life experiences that you can that are transferable. The other thing is the mind mapping works. If you don't have any direct correlation with working with Salesforce, look at what other experience you have. For instance, I have some web development background. So although I'm not an Apex guru, I do have some experience with HTML and CSS and a splash of JavaScript. There's ways that you can use some other skill sets that will actually complement that of you moving into learning these other skill sets that are Salesforce specifics much faster. And that's highly valued.
Okay, so the next question is, someone's moving from one country to another, you know, what is your advice on how to be familiar with the new job market and how to learn to adjust to their resumes, to the desired preferred formats? Like, you know, like if I'm moving, like, I don't know that, I mean, I know eventually I want to go to South Africa, and it's like, I'm always thinking about, you know, what is that going to look like? What can I do out there, right? So it's similar, somebody wants to move to the US or something. How do you adapt to the culture and the way of presenting yourself and finding a job in a different country?
Yeah, I think doing the research so that you know whatever country that you're going to, find the sites, the Twitter leaders in that particular country, connect with those folks, connect with, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about our Ohana, connect with the local user groups and ask those questions, because you're right that whenever you change to any kind of different culture, that you need to understand how to adapt. So do that work ahead of time. I will say that I went on a job trip to Dallas. I'm from Chicago, and there was a woman in one of my rad classes, and I randomly reached out to her through the community and said, hey, I'm going to be in Dallas, want to grab coffee? We ended up having a couple of dinners and really forming a very real friendship. And she was open and I was open to it, and we learned a lot, and I met a bunch of people in Dallas. So same thing with moving to another country, is reach out to the Ohana there. You're going to find a friend.
Absolutely. This question is, so by the way, in our audience, we have both men and women, which is totally awesome, right? So here's a question from a gentleman going, what is your main advice for allies to help reduce the inequality? It's such a great question, because this is very near and dear to my heart. Like, I know as a delivery lead and a lead architect, I still face the initial, you know, like not being heard that, Blanca talked about earlier, like how do we make sure we're still heard even though I'm up there? So it's a great question if you guys want to help address it. And we're at 1 minute left.
Yeah, I'll take this one, Allison. So I think you can bring them to the table, introduce them to somebody who works at the company maybe they're trying to get into. Sharing your network is really, really, really a huge thing. Maybe become their mentor, right? At Rad Women, we have many male coach allies who actually help women learn how to code. And there's a lot of different ways that you can be an ally, but just acknowledging them and helping make sure that you're amplifying what they're saying in case they are in a room where they're not being heard. These are all ways that you can provide support. And you'll see that the benefits will be great for everybody all around.
Okay,
right, and
so 2 more questions here. One is about salary negotiation, right? Like it's like, how do I negotiate a salary? To follow up the question is like, how do I negotiate my salary? I mean, we all go through that, right? Like, like you've got experience, you're up there and then you're talking to someone else and they're like, we're sorry, we can't afford you. Or it's like, you know what, no, you don't have enough experience, so I can't pay you what you want. How do you navigate that?
yeah, the biggest thing is do your research and know your value. Know what that specific to that geographic area, that position will bear in that market. Understand how your experience stacks up in that range. I think Blanca mentioned you don't have to share your salary range when you're doing that negotiation, but know what that position is worth and what you're bringing in experience. Negotiation is tough. There's no 2 ways about it. People are very uncomfortable negotiating, and I think we as women are a little bit hesitant to talk about money. So you have to do the research, get the data, and that will give you a lot more confidence. At least it does for me.
Ask people who are in your network that you're very comfortable around, just to give you like a range if they're in a position like yours somewhere. Or do you happen to know, maybe you're in a different role at this company, but I'm looking to get in. Do you know what their range is for this specific position? And I'll let you know that I have a close friend of mine that made a transition recently and was looking at like 40+% increase. So do your homework, make connections, and when you go in to negotiate, make sure that you're not shy about it. Be vocal.
Yeah.